Thank you very much, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and I've given the opportunity to my two colleagues, incidentally from our coalition partners, Professor Ramasamy, other than Deputy Chief Minister of the State of Penang that we are in control, is also a leading member of the Democratic Action Party. And my old colleague, Kamaruddin Jaafar, is a member of parliament. Member of parliament representing the Islamic Party, used to be even the Secretary General of the Islamic Party. But this represents the new consciousness that we are clear in our agenda on democratic reforms. Although we come from three different parties, Shamsul Iskandar, of course, an MP, who defeated the incumbent chief minister in the state of Malacca, quite formidable, and of course Khalid Jaafar. So Jiruhan Yusan, arigatou gozaimasu for this occasion. He was kind enough to come to Kuala Lumpur and say, apologize, but I said to him, it's okay, I mean, just some problems. I've gone through worse in my life. So being 3 hours at the airport and again sent back, that is small. But what is important is the bigger agenda. Bilateral relations with Japan is important. In fact, for a long time, Mr. Jiruhan, you and the foundation, Sasakawa Peace Foundation, is aware I'm very committed. In fact, I've been pushing very hard for Japan to play a more prominent role, other than business, trade, cultural, educational, civilization, multi-religious dialogues, because this is important to me for the future of the region in particular. And this consistently I've been pushing for a long time, even when I was young. When I was Minister of Education, for example, when people talk about just education or science, technology, I brought in the 80s, the two prominent reformers in education who talked about education reform in Japan to share their views. And through the Institute of Policy Research and Sasakawa Peace Foundation, we've been promoting the whole idea of Asian Renaissance in terms of economic success, yes, but also cultural empowerment, intellectual leadership, because we would lose a generation if we do not expose them to new ideas, including legacy of the past. I'm sure the great civilization of Japan or the Chinese or the Arabs of Indonesia in the region has a role in terms of molding the minds of our young. Now let's go back to the issue of a Muslim Democrat. Professor Rama mentioned the issue of compatibility. When I was in the States teaching at Georgetown, I've been asked to speak in umpty universities from Stanford, Harvard. The most common topic is Islam and democracy. I said they never talk about Christian and democracy or Buddhism and democracy or Hinduism and democracy, Islam. Of course, I had to respond because the notion of Islam, because of the Qaeda, of the various wars and civil war, gives a negative view. But I said, let us look at the facts, the historical antecedents in the region. Indonesia had a democratic, free elections in 1955, where the three main parties, the Nationalist Party, PNI, led by Sukarno, the Socialist Communist Party, at that time was free in Indonesia, led by Aidit, Tan Malaka and the rest. Tan Malaka was earlier, but at that time DN Aidit, and the coalition of Muslim parties under Muhammad Nasser, who later became Prime Minister, and coalition of Muslim parties called Masyumi. They have rallies in Jakarta. Minimum 500,000 people. Today, 500,000 supported the Communist Party. The following day, 600,000, the Muslim Party. And the elections were relatively free and fair. I always joke, and I repeated this many times to many friends. I said, even with the then Vice President Al Gore, because I am with Al Gore in the Generations Advisory Group. I still serve with him since 2005. Whenever he's present, I said, the Indonesian elections in 1955 was more fair than the elections in Florida when Bush won and Al Gore lost. Al Gore said, I agree with you. Now, so nobody talks about compatibility. But Islam and democracy. This is the largest Muslim country in the world. Okay. But later hijacked by Sukarno for a different reason. Not because Islam or non-Islam, but because he was a nationalist, secular at that time, beginning to be influenced by the leftist, the communists, partly because of the flaw or the mistake of the Americans and the West. And how Jamal Abdel Nasser was pushed to the Russians, similarly in the experience of Sukarno, because the geopolitical, nothing to do with religion, with the Islam or democracy. That's my first point. Now, second, largest Muslim population in the world is India. And the Indians have accepted as a norm. You go to India, you can hardly find Muslims arguing about compatible or not. In fact, sometimes they kept on asking, why is Pakistan in this manner? With the Indian Muslims and the Pakistani Muslims have always this difficult sort of relations. But it's very interesting, the debate, that people accept it as Islamic, nothing wrong with Islam, okay? And of course, I'm very, very close to Indonesia, but I spent a week, end of December, in India. And of course, the development in Turkey. Yeah, we have problems. Sometimes they tend to exaggerate when they involve Tayyip Erdogan or Indonesia. I mean, all countries, even mature democracies, Japan or United States, there's a huge debate on the relevant democracy, whether there's freedom, true freedom, whether there is justice. You remember Occupy Wall Street some years back, and the State of the Union address by Obama talking about inequality. There's also a very important book, not that popular, by Al Gore, on the assault on reason. The topic is assault on reason, where here was a former Vice President of America saying that there's something very wrong in America. The media is not playing its role. The judiciary is not truly independent. People tend to be governed by generalities, no interest in deep analysis and understanding of issues. I mean, it's a critique of society. What I'm saying is that when you engage in a debate or discourse, that's democratic. And of course, it is not near ideal what we have. Now, coming back to Malaysia, we started off in 1957 under the first Prime Minister Tunku Abdul Rahman, promising through the constitution that Malaysia will become a liberal democratic country, will support free elections, will respect the rights of every single citizen of the country. Although Islam is the official religion, the language is the Malay language, the language of the majority of its people, and we still keep the institution of the monarchy, the Malay rulers. That is there in the constitution. So it's not something that we are now preaching anew. That was what was promised. but you know, democracy through the majority seats in parliament, you tend to dilute through new laws, draconian security laws, sedition laws. Only 2 weeks back, the prominent lawyer and also opposition leader convicted for sedition. So you still have these laws. Media. There's not one TV station or one newspaper that is independent. All controlled or owned by the ruling party. Now, I happen to be the opposition leader in Malaysia. We had elections in 2013. I didn't have 1 minute of airtime on television. And still, they promote as a moderate democratic country. I have failed to understand. I read some reports from Japan also. Malaysia is moderate democratic. I mean, it is moderate in the sense we don't go and kill one another, I accept. But media is not free. Certainly not. I mean, if you have a situation where you don't have 1 minute of airtime on television, it's very serious. For example, Chairman Juruhan, you were saying about, my experience here. It's okay. I said, okay, move on, because to me, bilateral relations is important. You know what the media alluded to? Anwar may be involved in the Yakuza. That is why he was not allowed in. And I was not given a chance to explain. And then another one. He may be, considered by the Japanese like a porn star. Involved in some pornography movie. That's why he's not allowed to be. I mean, these are, of course, irresponsible remarks. But this is tolerated in the mainstream media. He is a CIA agent. He is agent of the Israelis. This is continuous every year. Of course, started by a friend of Mahathir is, of course, a friend of the Japanese. They say, you come to Japan, don't criticize Mahathir. I don't intend to, but there's reality. I mean, he has done good work. I worked with him very well for decades, but it's reality. He has destroyed the institution of a free media, of the judiciary. And his son has been declared now as the one top 10 billionaire in the country. You think he must have won lottery every week to have billions of dollars? It shows a flaw in the system. When you become a prime minister and your children become billionaires, is a flaw in the system. Even you call it democracy. What is worse if it is not democratic? So what do we do then? To the credit of many of my colleagues, including from Islamic Party and Democratic Action Party, when I was in prison in 1998, they started a new wave of awareness. If you continue in this fragmented manner, then we can never have a change. But they say they have a problem because we have an Islamic Party. So there is that prejudice. Can they be trusted? Because, in Algeria, when they talk about Muslim democracy, when the French supported this coup d'etat against the FIS at that time, the reason given was it is always dangerous to give a Muslim party a victory because it's one person, one vote, one time. That means once they take over, no way are they going to change. But I'm not a member of the Islamic Party. But I think to do justice to the party, you must also know that it is not Taliban. It has participated in democratic process from 1957 and every elections. It has won states. One time, even 3 states they have control. And in different times, 3 states in the country where they are Muslim majority. Right now, they have 1. Okay, so they say then, when you talk about Muslim democracy in Malaysia, we must therefore have Muslim support. although Malaysia is a multiracial, multireligious country. So that is the position for now. As I said, in the last elections, with all these problems and the fraud in the electoral process, we still garner over 52% of the popular votes. Now people some find it difficult. You mean to say no airtime on the media? Nothing report, no positive report in the newspaper? You still have 52%. That does not speak well for the media. So, I'm joking. Don't take it seriously. You will report me if I say that. Means to say, if you have a country where the media is all against you and you get 52% of the support, you see, which means the credibility of the media is questioned. People read, people watch the television, they don't trust anymore. So I always say, as I said this morning at Grips, we must trust on the wisdom of the masses. Now, where do we stand? We have Justice Party, we have Democratic Action Party, mainly the non-Muslims or non-Malays, vast majority, particularly the Chinese, ethnic Chinese, and the Islamic Party. So what are you? Do you, as a Muslim democracy, do you support an Islamic state? Or do you support a secular state? They always ask me, and they say I have been avoiding an answer to the question. Now the reason is this. When you say secular state, is it secular laicity, the extreme rejection of the relevance of religion like in France? Or is it secularism like in the States where, there is always this negotiation or accommodation of some of the religious sentiments? Not in the state proper, but it's always there. If you read, for example, Alexis de Tocqueville, Democracy in America, you realize the prevalent role of religion, Christianity, in the formation, even articulation of the American Constitution, American values of justice, of accommodation, etc. So, are you then for an Islamic state? Similarly, Iran, Islamic State, Pakistan, Islamic State, Saudi Arabia, Islamic State, it means many things to many people. So what we decided in the three parties among the leaders is to, other than arguing about slogans and labels, you explain what you want. So you say, constitution means freedom of religious practice, of faith, of conscience. Nobody should dictate one's religion. Free media, independent judiciary. And for Malaysia, because we inherit the system under the then Prime Minister Tun Razak and then Mahathir, the new economic policy which is biased in favor of the Malays, race-based economic policy, we say we have to dismantle this and have a transparent economic system, market reforms, but strong on affirmative action based on need, not based on race. Which means the vast majority of the poor Malays and the indigenous tribes of Sabah, Sarawak, the marginalized Indians, and pockets of poverty among the Chinese in the urban areas must be tackled in a transparent manner. So that is the economic policy. So to conclude, because that we should allow for an exchange and dialogue. Many of you, have seen your credentials, some very impressive, so I think we'll be able to share some of your views or observations. I think conclusion to say that, like the Arab Spring, the ups and downs, the worst is in Syria and Egypt, more promising in Tunisia, a bit more settled in Yemen and Yemen and Libya. transient, but there is no return, no turning back on democratic reforms. It is a difficult, painful process. So is in Malaysia. I am very optimistic. Can you imagine, given all the limitations and the curb in the media and the draconian laws, we still encourage this change and commitment for democratic reforms. People say the danger, talk about the danger, potential danger of extremism and fanaticism. I don't take this for granted. I don't think that this is something we can dismiss easily. In any religion, any racial blocks, there's always this tendency, possibility of the emergence of a small extremist or fanatical group. Now, I am for tough measures against any militant activity, either in the name of Islam or race or whatever, or ideology. And we should not allow the welfare of a nation to be hijacked by the few. After 9/11, I remember I was in prison, and I wrote this piece, which I think I could share with you, and probably Lau can get hold of the article and circulate. Because, when you write in complete, in prison, in solitary confinement, and you really focus, not knowing the details, what happened, I have not seen the photograph, the Twin Tower, whatever, nothing. But just the concern. My topic was who hijacked Islam. You see? That Islam was hijacked by a small group or few fanatics, and the Muslim world, the elites, the intellectuals, the political leaders, the scholars must stand up and combat this. So any government, local or international, must be clear and our resolve in combating militant activity. There is a difference. It doesn't matter you want to call for an Islamic state, you want to argue for about Islamic law, don't become too hypersensitive. I've talked to many liberals in Washington. You can talk about everything else, but the moment you talk about Islamic State, they get hysterical. I say engage in the dialogue. Where do we draw the line when you want to compel others to accept your views? When you use, language of hatred and militant activity, and that, I think, we draw the line. So, but these are all theoretical. Practical terms, look at Indonesia and Turkey in the elections. They have extreme Islamic parties calling for full application of Islamic law, Islamic state, Islamic principle, everything. And sometimes even bordering intolerance of others. But when the media is free, when you allow for an open engagement and reasoned discourse, how many percent of the support they get? 2%? 5% of the electoral votes? I mean, this is the reality in the Muslim world. So this bogey of danger, potential threat to freedom because of the existence of Islamic parties with their agenda is, of course, a gross exaggeration, and to me, manifestly unjust, because it's not the reality. Just like what I said, Islam and democracy is compatible based on the experience of the past. 1955 elections, and then in India, even in Pakistan. during the period of Jinnah and Liaquat Ali Khan, the first elections, was relatively free. Of course, it's now problematic state of Pakistan. Now, these experiences of these countries, particularly India, Indonesia, and Turkey, shows the way with all the limitations. I'm not here to be a propagandist for these countries. There are some views that we disagree, but at least it is moving in the right direction. There's no turning back in terms of democratic reforms. And these two are prominent Muslim countries. Indonesia, the largest Muslim country in the world, a prominent country in ASEAN, in Asia, and Turkey, of course, startling because of the economic performance and because the industrial gains, and it's between Europe and the Middle East. You know, they say what remains, not one Arab country that is now seen to be successful in a democratic reform. So the problem with the Arabs, I mean, if it is, it's not nothing but Islam. That's my point. If you want to talk about it, then let's talk about Arab culture and the problems and historical antecedents. So I must thank you again for being patient enough to share some of my views on the Malaysian experience. I don't want to be too detailed in my criticism of Malaysia. It's very difficult to criticize Malaysia in Japan because of the Look East policy. So there has been the trend of pro-establishment in Malaysia is very strong in Japan. I realize that. But whilst accepting the fact that bilateral relations is very important, and I don't think it is just the government. I mean, we represent the opposition. Professor Rama represents the state of Penang, and I'm also economic advisor to the state of Selangor. Selangor, in the state that I'm advisor, the richest state, most populous in Malaysia, the largest investor is Japan. So that's opposition state. So I don't think it is in terms of the interest. Our interest lies in the future. People highlight the fact that there was a difference of views. For example, Mahathir talks about East Asian Economic Caucus, and Anwar talks about broader dimension. I am still consistent in that. I don't believe that the region should be too dependent on China. The region should be having good relations with China, Japan, and in our region, India, Australia, which means it's not East Asia, it's Asia. Then, with that, Malaysia is a small country, even with Muslim democracy at work. Our advantage gain is when we have excellent relations with Europe and the United States. It doesn't mean I don't agree with them in their policy towards the Palestinians. I think it's grossly unjust and biased. But in terms of bilateral trade, education, technology, investments, I believe that we should continue to have extremely good relations. And more so with Japan, because as a point in fact, with all the changes in the global economy, including Japan, Malaysia, particularly the state that I am economic advisor to right now, the largest investor in Selangor is still Japanese companies. So thank you very much. Arigatou gozaimasu. Of course, I'm very supportive of these, both the Islamic financial instruments and also the Halal Hub. Although there's also rethinking of this, that finance, because I was also involved from 82 when we started the Islamic Bank in Malaysia. I continue to be consultant and advisor to the largest Islamic banking group, the Barakah, until I resigned last year because of the elections in Malaysia. Al-Barakah is, of course, the largest Islamic financial and banking system in the world. And therefore, I follow the development very well. Malaysia has done well, including in terms of sukuk, and bond market, Islamic bond, and financial systems. But there's also a side to this. Whilst you promote this, many countries, India is looking at the possibility of having this instrument, although they would not call it Islamic bank, they call it something else, cooperative bank or whatever. Turkey does not call it Islamic bank. Turkey call it participatory bank because of the sensitivity, secular state, some opposition, etc. To me, it does not matter. What's important is the system. It promotes a system. But related to this, there's also a new thinking among the younger economists, Muslim economists. Why are we talking about Islamic finance? Well, they say because there is no interest. But sometimes the service charge is more than the interest. Secondly, if you want to introduce an alternative system, then it must be more just. But if the bottom line is only profit, then there's a lot of questions raised now. There was a session with all the central bankers, governors, and Islamic banks at Harvard some years back. And I threw up this challenge for them to rethink. Because for a Muslim or non-Muslim, if the system operates, if the system is helpful and fair and just, they will support. It does not matter the name. Buddhist bank or Islamic bank or Christian bank. But if you call it Islamic bank and the system is as exploitative, as problematic, and does not cater for the larger interests of the people, then we have a problem. And that is why I'm just throwing this, that there's a debate now, a very healthy debate on the issue of Islamic financial instruments. Although as a policy we back it, and there is now gaining momentum. It's now total about $1 trillion already in the entire arrangement. All the people question whether it's truly Islamic or not, whether you just change the name or change. Notwithstanding that. Now, secondly, on the issue of halal hub is also the same. Although I support, but sometimes we get a bit too far-fetched, we get, because most of it, 90% are halal. I don't need to put a halal label here. Just water. Okay? Or coffee. But sometimes it gets, I see even in Malaysia, sometimes a normal vegetables or something important, everything you have to put. And it is an additional cost. You see? So if it's established from the beginning, there's nothing to do. You don't put pork or whatever, which is not halal. Then there should be an international thing which reduce the cost. It doesn't become using Islamic, but it's business actually. So I'm while I support, even in Penang we have an halal hub. The state government is supporting that. The federal government near Kuala Lumpur is also have a halal hub. It is gaining momentum, and it is fair because at least Muslims who do not take pork then feel they have a choice. Like the Jews are very strict on kosher beef, all right, so we should give that liberty to the Muslims to decide this halal. We want to take halal food. My concern is, other than promoting this, and I agree with you that this is an important economic or business instrument, I think there should be growing voice to check the excesses. Because some people are just using this pure making money. And sometimes it's absurd. Things that I see, some vegetables, Why do you put halal hub on halal certification? Why do you go to pay these people just to have the certification? I mean, so religion becomes an encumbrance, a problem. It should not be a problem. So that is my view. After all, in Malaysia, you have a Chinese restaurant serving pork, but people know we don't go and eat there. Of course, I go and take coffee there. You can still take. So what I mean is support, yes, but there's a need for growing awareness that you do it only as a requirement to make sure that people have a choice. You drink and you know it is halal. Okay? But I see it, because I see some labels, clearly, fruits. Because they say the people may feel, toothpaste, everything you must have a halal chop. I mean, unless it is established, then it should not be problematic because it costs unnecessarily more. You want to help Muslims in business, I support. But I don't think you should use religion in that context. That's my view. The democratic values is what? Is consultation, is decision, the will of the people, is vox populi. Okay, but people say vox populi, vox dei. The voice of the people is the voice of God, because the people have the final say. But even in the Western country, they don't go to the extent. So it is a theoretical problem. That's why Muslims at first were worried about that. But this was debated even by at the time of Jefferson. The tyranny of the majority, the danger of abuse of the democratic process. This has been addressed. Of course, it's ethical. I mean, as a Muslim, I'm concerned of that, because you can't say the voice of the people, majority can seek to do something which is grossly unjust. So there must be parameters drawn. First, the constitutional guarantees, framework, for example, like what we said. That's why I say you spell out in the constitutional guarantees. Freedom of expression, basic human rights, minority rights, and so that these are not trampled with. But they say then it's the same with others. Why call it Muslim Democrats? I don't call it Muslim Democrats. I call Democrats. People ask me to talk about Muslim democracy. I talk democracy. But I'm not concerned whether you call it Muslim Democrat or not. It does not matter. That's why it is better to spell out. People are so obsessed, there must be, because we want to differentiate between a theocracy, become a religious state as such, and a democracy. But in Malaysia, democracy, but we accept Islam is the official religion. Meaning, that's the constitution. But Islam's official religion must not be used to compel the rest. One. Number two, Islam as official religion must not stop the practice of other religions. So you draw the line, because sometimes, like you see in the debate in Malaysia now, there's some group supported by the ruling party trying to, stop even me going to the church. I don't go to pray in the church. I go to speak and dialogue and meeting in the church. And sometimes they use, like the issue of Bible. You can't use the word Allah. You can't distribute the Bible in Malay. But this to me is a problem, because you use religion to compel others. So Muslim democracy, to my mind, because this is a deficit in the Muslim world. It's a deficit. In the Middle East, no democracy. In Turkey, yes. In Africa, the Muslim countries, no. In Asia, Indonesia, then we have a problem. So that is why people ask, what is wrong with the Muslim world? I say the Muslim world is wrong. It's not the religion. But poor governance. I mean, after all, Mubarak survived for 30 years because of American support. So, I mean, I'm not saying that, it's entirely the American fault. But that's the reality, When it comes to Morsi being toppled, the West are very soft. Well, it is like Tony Blair said, well, it is a coup d'etat. It's not coup d'etat. It is coup d'etat, but then it is a different coup d'etat. I mean, a coup d'etat is a coup d'etat. I mean, and then you see, but there were killings. Well, the circumstances different. I heard Tony Blair on television, and I'm shocked. You see, people see, therefore, a hypocrisy or contradiction. You set different standards. I mean, so I think what we want to promote here, to explain, if people ask, democracy in Malaysia, well, I mean, you use Muslim democracy, but actually in Malaysia, Muslims are only 50% plus, say maximum 60%. What are you going to do with the 40%? Do you want them to have Muslim democracy also? You have clear parameters. That's why I'm saying it is better to spell out. I mean, I've been criticized. They say, Anwar, you're avoiding. Are you for a secular state? You didn't say so. Are you for Islamic state? You didn't answer. I say, I answer by what I want, not what you want. You want to dictate me an answer, and you interpret secular state differently from what I do. But if I say freedom of conscience, freedom of religion, freedom of free media, democratic values, basic human rights, majority, minority, does not matter, then we share. Is it Western? Yes. Is it Japanese? Yes. I mean, it's what you believe in. Although we don't all practice that, but then at least that's what we believe in. Do I answer the question? Not clear. Well, Malaysia is not a democracy in the first place, all right?
What do you...
But as you have democracy in France and United States and Japan, there are shifts. There's slight differences. Electoral system differ, and I think the understanding the limits. There's certain subject here is taboo on defense. There's certain it's not on the state. So I think you must give some room for maneuver. I remember Indonesia when they debated on the issue of pornography. And I was in the States then. Then in every dialogue, when I say Indonesian democracy, the liberals in the States was attacking me because they say, how can you have laws against pornography? I say, you have 99.9 laws that all you share. Just because of the strict law against pornography, you mean to say it has lost its democratic values. I mean, this is too much. Let them navigate. Let them decide what cannot be done. I remember watching the Wembley final match one year, tennis, Wembley Stadium, and then I was with my wife. And we saw this streaker, this young lady, naked, running in the tennis court. I saw everybody clap, I clapped. And then my wife said, why did you clap? I said, I thought it's their culture. But of course the lady was arrested. Which means, even in UK, you don't allow people to run naked. So there are rules. But probably in the Muslim world, maybe stricter conditions, but that part, but otherwise, I'd see no real difference. That's why I say, if you start articulating the democratic values, no difference. Of course, theoretically, yes, because they say democracy means the will of the people, the voice of the majority, vox populi, vox Dei is voice of God. But you mean to say, do you think the voice of the majority will then create, new laws that run against the religion? No. So I think that is the line that we have to draw a bit. There's a debate. Can we make laws that runs contrary to God's law, the Quran? Okay, there's a debate. I would say, as a general rule, no. But there are always, a caveat to that. A temporary measure, emergency considerations, multiracial, multireligious considerations. There are a lot of other considerations. It's not just absolute law. I mean, as a Muslim, do I drink? I don't. Do I encourage people to drink? No. But non-Muslim drink, what do I do? So some people take strong objections, but the law is clear. There was a debate in the state we control in Selangor. There is one. They wanted to ban sale of liquor in mixed areas. So we said, if it is Muslim village, don't sell liquor. But if it is 30%, 40% non-Muslims there, ethnic Chinese Indians, you don't stop them. But I say, Muslims should not buy. Then okay, you have certain rules. I mean, this flexibility is there, but it does not make a country not democratic because you don't sell liquor in a Muslim village. But liquor is found in the urban areas because there's nothing in Islam that forbid you from drinking for a non-Muslim. So how do I go make laws to say that no alcohol should be served? Except by me, if I'm going to entertain Mr. Hanyu tonight, but he's entertaining me, in case I will not serve him liquor. If he buys, he pays. But does not make you, in a sense, no, I was president of UNESCO once in Paris. And in Paris, you don't serve alcohol. They say, oh, Excellency, everything dry. They call it dry because there's no. But I said, it's not my money, it's government money. I can't use it to buy alcohol. And I still won the presidency of UNESCO. So people, I think, not only Muslims, even non-Muslims, as long as you don't compel them, they respect you. And I think this is the cultural tolerance that we have to promote. But I frankly, I don't know. Kamarudin can help because what is there? Is there anything really different from our Muslim democracy? I mean, the essential rules actually do not differ. Yeah. That's my view. I mean, sometimes intolerance, to build a mosque, they say in some Muslim countries, is very difficult. You know how many years it took permission to build a church in Rome? I think they say about 15 years. So, but these are not ground rules. But these are people tend to. If you take Berlusconi's remarks is so anti-religion. I'm not talking about his personal side. I'm talking about some of his statements. Shocking for me to read. So strongly anti-Islam in particular. Sorry, yeah. You see, this morning at Grips is very interesting. I met just before the fall of Hosni Mubarak. I was in Cairo. I met both groups. Ayman Noor represents the liberal secular wing, and then at that time the chief supreme leader of the Muslim Brotherhood was Mehdi Akif. So I met one for lunch, one for dinner. In between, I met the Grand Mufti, the Sorbonne-trained Mufti of Egypt, who later came up with a very silly fatwa, edict to say that those who oppose Jannah Sisi can be shot. I mean, what Muslim scholar is that? It baffles me. But anyway, that's the state of confusion in Egypt. Now, when I met the more liberal secular, they were very pessimistic. The Muslim Brotherhood more optimistic because I think the groundwork. Well, they took over. Is that only the Brotherhood role? No. I think it is a combination of all factors. People just clamoring for reform. They're just tired and sick of the dictatorship and the corrupt Mubarak regime. Then there was, of course, the euphoria. Morsi took over. I mean, to be fair, he did his part. At least clean, not corrupt, but probably lacking in experience. He did not engage with too many people. So he's still seen to be representing one faction. And there were also forces. And then now it's proven. Funding from America, media in America, funding from Saudi Arabia to topple him. Then he was toppled. And so they say it's the reverse. Very disturbing, very unfortunate, very sad. Not just for Morsi, but it's for, the clamor for reform and for democracy. So, what is it now? I mean, of course, I have not been there for the last many months, but I'm closely monitoring. You see, the opposition to CC in terms of demonstrations of the brotherhood now has extended to the students. And the students from all factions is no longer the Islamic faction. You see, the liberals, the secularists have now joined force because CC have arrested not only the brotherhood leaders, but all the rest. Any semblance of criticism cannot be tolerated. But of course, the West, I see the West. I want to talk about reform in Malaysia. I don't depend. I don't expect anything from the foreign ministry of Japan or from the United States or Europe. Europe maybe a bit. If there's an arrest, there's beating, they make some noise. Japan very diplomatic. They only deal with Korea and China. The rest they're very quiet. Now, but, so you can't depend. So I think the Egyptians realize, if they think they want to get the Americans to support democracy promotion, no. How can you allow a coup d'etat by a general who's so ruthless? Okay. Now it's complicated because at the time America's voice out, then the Russians come in and support. So it becomes a Cold War drama unfolding in the Middle East. But I don't think it's easy for Sisi to. He may win the elections as president, but the opposition is too strong. When millions of people know about freedom and taste freedom, they're not going to surrender that easily. So I don't believe that he can survive for 10 years. I don't believe. But although the military is very pervasive, very strong, and they always use Israel as the enemy, and therefore we need to be very strong. And they use it to beat their people. They shoot more Egyptians than the Israelis. Although the reason they have a strong army is to fight Israel, but they use the army to shoot their own people. I noticed that there is this, the opposition demonstrations has not fizzled. Although media can have a fatigue. That's why when I remember when I was in prison, first year okay, second year okay, NHK also report, Asahi Shimbun also report. By third year they get tired. It's fatigue, There are many other stories to tell. So there is that. But in Cairo, the demonstration numbers are growing. You see? So you don't know. Like you see in Thailand or you look in Ukraine, sometimes it fizzle out and losing and suddenly there's an upsurge. I am more optimistic than many about Egypt. The problem is before they were united. Now the secular liberal are a bit more suspicious of the brotherhood because they thought that it's not inclusive enough. In next year elections, this year elections for the president, Sisi may still win, but I don't think he'll survive. But I don't know. I'm not a futurologist. I'm a fighter.
Thank you.
You see, in 1990s, I'm not talking about myself, the finance minister, because under Mahathir, 1990s, we were number one foreign direct investments. We were number one in terms of growth in ASEAN. We were number two in terms of competitiveness after Singapore. Market capitalization, we were number one. Now we have lost all. But we are still above Myanmar. So not bad. Now, why? Because I think it's poor governance. There's no plan to push new reforms, you know. Say business litigation problems. Big companies, Japanese, German, American companies, they don't go to our courts. They go to Hong Kong or Singapore. How many 100 million will we lose a year? I'm not talking about TPPA. It's their own choice. So because of the perception that the system is corrupt. Crime is a major problem now. This is security. But of course, Malaysia is generally still good. We are able to sustain. But I think we have enormous potential if we govern well. Corruption is endemic. You know, according to the Auditor General annual report, when we compute the leakage due to corruption, waste, extravagance, is about 20 billion ringgit a year, comes to about how many billion dollars? 7 billion dollars for a small emerging economy. Okay. And so I think if we can aggressively promote, I mean, I may disagree with Mahathir on many issues, right? But I think when I was with him as his deputy and finance minister, we really push, you know. We promote in a big way. I was in Hong Kong, you know, Japan, you know, all the time, you know, meeting companies, encouraging them, you know, facilitating, and people come and expand. Now, middle income trap, because we have not moved beyond that. You know, textile we have lost, of course. We can't go on with the textile or even manufacturing at that level, the lower end. We should learn. That's why I say we should learn, because Japan is higher. But if we want to talk, Mahathir talk because the influence of the Sogo Socials, Japan produced cars. We also produce cars. In the end, we lost $10 billion. We didn't say we lose. We say investments. Okay? Rationalization. So we have to be realistic. You know, there are things that we do. I think here we should learn from Taiwan better, because Taiwan does not aim to be Japanese economy right away. They aim to go on the higher one up niche and not really up. We, because of the influence of Kosasha, thanks to the Japanese big companies, because they, you know, they treat Mahathir very well. So they say car very important. He said, okay, back car very important. I was finance minister. In 1997, I knew billions have been lost already. No way can we compete. Then steel. Japan can go up without anybody, because the steel industry. We went for steel. How much did we lose? $3 billion. So it is important, you know, that you see success. You must not get into the head. You must listen. I mean, I may be talking about this and that, macroeconomics. But you ask me specific economy, I will have, if for example, had I won, I mean, we won, I formed the government, I'll call top academics, business people with business experience, call up all the friends from Japan, from China, from India, listen and see, and they craft a policy, then move. I don't think I have the expertise of, Mr. Know-all. This is a problem economic. That is, I think, essentially. But corruption is a major problem in Malaysia. I mean, I don't want to be here like personal, but as I said, no, okay, Mahathir has done well, but his son is the billionaire. And you know, my quarrel with him in 98, you know, every company getting problems, He asked me to give 2 billion ringgit to his son, bail out. And I said, I can't. So he gave from Petronas. Petronas gave 1.8 billion to save his company, his son's company. Yeah. And people say, Anwar, you shouldn't fight him. He's your boss. You should support him. Okay, I mean, I supported him. But not as finance minister to sign 1.8 billion. How do I answer to people? You see? These things, these are facts. These are facts. This is not political charge. These are facts. I know the company, I know the fund, I know the valuation by Lloyd's. I was the finance minister. And I was not very smart, but certainly not stupid. I know what's happening. So I think Malaysia have lost that. You know, like foreign direct investments. We have lost to Vietnam, Singapore, Indonesia. And in 1 year, even to the Philippines. Okay. We are able to compete with Thailand because they are in the stalemate for the last 6 months or more. So we can't. There's no excuse, actually. You know, Malaysia, Japanese, because of there's an advantage of Look-East policy, the Japanese actually look to Malaysia also because of this promotion. But how is it we have lost in every single area? Not to America or to Japan, to Vietnam, to Indonesia. You know, Indonesia in 1990s, I remember Suharto when I go, although political philosophy is something else, but he treats me well. When I go, he will ask 8-9 ministers to sit down with me. Because he thinks, his neighbor, we have, just sit down. And they have to ask questions and discuss economic policy, this and that, Now, I think we are going to go and learn from them because of the figures and the achievements they have reached. So, issue of governance cannot be underestimated. Leaders must accept that good governance is a major criteria. When leaders are corrupt, you want to be a minister, you want to be in business, you want to make money, you want to make your son a billionaire, you destroy the country. So you have a choice. If I want to be in politics, then I say no business. And I know, you don't underestimate. I was finance minister 8 years, I know how the Japanese make business. Yeah, I've met many of them. Yes, sir, I said, welcome, finance minister, and okay, good food, okay, fair. But then they bring this geisha, okay, very good. But when you are the boss, the oldest geisha will be treating you. And the prettiest, youngest geisha will treat your secretary. No, I'm just, relax a bit, relax. Yeah. So I'm just sharing with you. Just relax a bit so that you understand. That how I view. So my view on governance or corruption is very strong. I saw this. And if I've given the chance, I think we want to build and clean up. Because people don't trust the politicians, they are right. Because politicians, most of them are just generally corrupt. Now I came in, all right? All this treated well. Best hotels, best. Okay. Then, business talk. We're having this project. How do we deal with it? I said, yeah, okay, go on, carry on, very good. No, how do we send it? I said, send it through a normal channel. Now, how do you send that? I said, send what? I said, through my Secretary General. No. Your nominee. Because that's how they treated my predecessor. You know what was my reply? I will give all the support. Anything, any problem, I will facilitate because I want you to invest in Malaysia. But if I find you give any money in this manner, I will screw you up and cancel your contract. Okay. They may respect me, but there's also a danger there. They spread out and they know this man is dangerous. You can't make deals. So to be clean in politics is not necessarily an easy game. You are marked. Now, I'm talking here, although I will not name the company, I am talking from experience. You see, how to channel, whether to do it like the previous or not. Now, I'm sharing this with you to show that you talk about reform or good governance is not as easy as people claim to be. No, it is a challenging task. But our country, particularly Japan, is different. Whatever, I mean, I'm not saying it's right to be corrupt, but for a country like Malaysia struggling, you destroy the economy. If you have 20 billion ringgit leakages, if you have leaders all, multi-millionaires and children and family members, billionaires, and nobody dares say anything. Malaysia will not say anything because they have laws. The Japanese will not say anything because they have investments. So we are, stuck with that. Don't look too worried because I'm still optimistic. Yeah, so I take this opportunity to thank you very much. You're not used to because I know how here in Japan politics is very proper. You say the right things, and I choose this occasion and thank you to Sanju, who's been Sasakawa Peace Foundation, been very close friend, to frankly share with you. So please forgive me if you think some of the things I say is not usual. I'm not a usual politician. That's why I've spent so many years in jail. But I must thank you very much for your patience. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.